I never imagined a knock at my front door would turn into a power struggle that changed everything. But the moment I opened it and saw her standing there, clipboard in hand and entitlement in her eyes, I knew my quiet life was about to be tested. This was no friendly neighbor or concerned official. This was an HOA Karen, the kind who believes rules matter more than people, and she had decided my house was her next target. She didn't introduce herself or explain why she was there. She simply pointed at my porch, my yard, my door, rattling off violations that made no sense, all while speaking to me like I was a child who'd broken her favorite toy. I tried to stay calm, but every sentence she spoke felt like a challenge, as if she was daring me to argue, so she could assert her authority right there on my doorstep. According to her, my home upgrade plans were unauthorized, my exterior was out of compliance, and if I didn't fix things immediately, fines would start piling up fast. The problem was, she was wrong, completely wrong. But standing there, listening to her threaten me with letters, fees, and legal action, I realized she believed she held all the cards. What she didn't know was that I'd already been planning an upgrade. Something entirely legal, properly approved, and carefully documented. An upgrade that would quietly strip away her imagined power. At that moment, though, she smirked, handed me a notice, and told me she'd be back to check on my progress, as if my home belonged to her and not me. I closed the door with my hands shaking, not from fear but from anger, because no one likes being bullied on their own property. That night, instead of backing down, I dug into the rules, the permits, and the fine print she clearly hadn't read. And that's when I realized this story wasn't going to end the way she expected. Because when someone crosses the line at your door, thinking they own your silence, sometimes the smartest response isn't shouting back. It's upgrading so completely that their authority simply vanishes. And as I sat there, documents spread across my table, a plan forming in my mind, I knew the next time she showed up, the conversation would be very different. She thought she was in control, but by morning, I would be ready to take back my home, my peace, and my power. And that's when the upgrade that shut down her authority once and for all truly began. It started quietly, legally, and strategically, setting the stage for a confrontation she would never see coming. And it would change everything forever for both of us. The next morning, I didn't wake up angry anymore. I woke up focused, while HOA Karen probably assumed I'd spend the day scrambling to repaint walls or remove imaginary violations. I was doing something far more dangerous to her authority, reading. I pulled up the HOA bylaws, city zoning codes, county records, and every permit requirement tied to my property. Page after page, one thing became clear. Her confidence wasn't based on power. It was based on intimidation. She relied on people not knowing the rules well enough to push back. And that's exactly where she had misjudged me. Buried deep in the documents was the key. My home qualified for a specific classification upgrade, one that legally shifted oversight away from the HOA and placed it under municipal jurisdiction instead. It wasn't a loophole. It was written clearly, approved years ago, and fully enforceable. Once completed, the HOA's authority over exterior modifications, like mine, would be extremely limited. No fines, no inspections, no surprise visits. I spent the rest of the day making calls, confirming details, and documenting everything. Every conversation was logged, every email saved. By evening, I had written confirmation from the city, outlining exactly what the HOA could and could not enforce once the upgrade was finalized. That was the moment I smiled for the first time since she'd knocked on my door. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protection. About making sure no one could ever stand on my porch again and speak to me like I didn't belong in my own home. A few days later, right on schedule, she returned. Same clipboard, same posture, same tone. She didn't ask if it was a good time. She never did. She announced she was there to check compliance. I listened politely as she went through her list, nodding while she talked herself into confidence. Then calmly, I handed her a folder. Inside were permits, letters, and highlighted sections of the bylaws she'd apparently never read. Her voice slowed. Her words started tripping over each other. She flipped pages faster, searching for something to regain control, but it wasn't there. The upgrade was real. The approval was official. And her authority? Reduced to almost nothing. She tried one last tactic, threatening escalation, but this time I was ready. I explained quietly and clearly that any further harassment would be documented and reported. No yelling, no insults, just facts. For the first time, she had nothing to say. She gathered her papers, avoided eye contact, and walked away without another word. Watching her leave, I felt something shift. Not victory, but relief. Because power doesn't belong to the loudest voice at the door. It belongs to the person who knows the rules better than the one abusing them. And this story was far from over. After that encounter, the neighborhood changed in subtle but unmistakable ways. It wasn't dramatic at first. There were no announcements or apologies. No sudden friendliness from the HOA. Instead, there was silence. The kind of silence that follows when someone realizes they've pushed too far and lost ground they can't reclaim. Days passed, then weeks, and HOA Karen didn't come back. No letters appeared in my mailbox. No warning notices were taped to my door. But I could feel her presence in other ways. Like the way she'd suddenly look away when our paths crossed, or how inspections near my house mysteriously stopped altogether. Word travels fast in communities like this, and it didn't take long before neighbors started asking questions. Quiet ones, curious ones. They wanted to know what I'd done, how I'd made her back off, and whether it was something they could do too. I didn't boast or exaggerate. I simply told the truth. I followed the rules, learned my rights, and upgraded my property legally. That was it. But to them, it sounded like rebellion. For years, they'd been living under the constant pressure of surprise fines, vague threats, and selective enforcement. Many of them had assumed that was just the cost of living there. Seeing someone stand firm without raising their voice planted a seed. Suddenly, Karen's authority didn't seem so absolute anymore. That shift became obvious during the next HOA meeting. I didn't plan to attend, but curiosity pulled me in. The room felt tense, like everyone was waiting for something to happen. Karen sat at the front, unusually quiet, shuffling papers instead of speaking. When residents started asking questions about enforcement, limits, and approval processes, she stumbled. People wanted clarity now. Documentation, consistency, everything. She had avoided providing before. Each question chipped away at the image she'd carefully built, and I could see frustration creeping into her expression. When my turn came to speak, I kept it brief. I referenced the bylaws, the municipal approval, and the confirmed limits of HOA authority. No accusations, just facts. The room went still. The board members exchanged looks. Karen didn't interrupt me once. That's when I realized the upgrade had done more than protect my home. It had exposed a weakness in the system she'd been exploiting. Authority only works when no one questions it. And now everyone was questioning everything. After that meeting, changes followed quickly. New guidelines were proposed. Oversight increased. Inspections required notice. Karen wasn't removed, but she was restrained. Bound by procedures she could no longer bend to her will. Walking home that night, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because I'd won, but because the fear was gone. My door was just a door again. My house was truly my home, and the line she crossed? It had led to an upgrade she could never undo. The real impact of what happened didn't fully sink in until months later, when life finally settled into a new rhythm. My mornings were quiet again. No anxious glances at the driveway. No tension every time someone walked past my house with a clipboard. The upgrade itself blended seamlessly into my home. But what it represented was permanent. It was proof that intimidation only works until someone refuses to play along. HOA Karen still existed in the neighborhood, but she was different now. More careful, more restrained. Her presence no longer carried fear, only formality. She had learned, the hard way, that authority without boundaries eventually collapses. Neighbors became more confident too. People started submitting written requests instead of verbal ones. They asked for citations, timelines, and confirmations. The culture shifted from obedience to awareness. And once that shift happens, it can't be reversed. I'd occasionally catch Karen watching from a distance, her expression unreadable, but she never came to my door again. Not once. The line she crossed had been drawn in permanent ink. What surprised me most wasn't her silence, but my own change. I stopped seeing myself as someone who had to defend their right to exist in their own space. I became proactive instead of reactive. When another notice arrived months later, unrelated and routine, I read it calmly, checked the references, and responded with confidence. No anger, no fear, just clarity. That was the true upgrade. Not the permits, not the paperwork, the mindset. Looking back, I realized how close I'd come to backing down that first night. How easy it would have been to comply just to keep the peace. That's what she expected. That's what she relied on. But peace built on intimidation isn't peace at all. It's surrender. And once you surrender, the demands never stop. Standing up didn't make me a troublemaker. It made me untouchable within the rules. Every community has someone like her. Someone who mistakes control for leadership and enforcement for power. And every one of them depends on silence. All it takes to shut that down is knowledge, patience, and the willingness to upgrade strategically instead of emotionally. I didn't shout her down. I didn't embarrass her. I didn't break any rules. I followed them better than she ever had. And in doing so, I took back my door, my home, and my peace. So if there's one lesson this story leaves behind, it's this. When someone crosses the line at your door, you don't always need to fight harder. Sometimes you just need to upgrade smarter. And once you do, their authority disappears, quietly and completely. Have you ever had someone try to control your home? Boss you around or cross the line like this HOA Karen? If you've ever faced someone like her, hit that like button to show you won't back down. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next crazy story of neighbors, rules, and justice. And comment below with troll if you think she went too far, or share your own story. Because everyone deserves to stand up for their home.